Let's face it, difficult people are everywhere. They show up at work, at home, in our friend groups, and sometimes even in ourselves. Whether it's the constant complainer, the aggressive boss, the passive-aggressive colleague, or the chronic pessimist, dealing with them can be draining. But here's the secret. The key to handling difficult people isn't about changing them, it's about mastering yourself. Most of us waste time reacting emotionally or trying to fix the other person. The truth is, difficult people often continue their behavior because they get a reaction. What if you stopped giving them that power by developing emotional intelligence, setting boundaries, and understanding what drives people's behavior? You take control of the situation and yourself. Difficult people stop being roadblocks and start becoming opportunities for personal growth. 1. Don't take it personally. This may be the most powerful yet most difficult principle to apply when dealing with difficult people. When someone criticizes you unfairly, speaks to you with disrespect, or lashes out emotionally, the natural instinct is to take it to heart. You feel attacked, misunderstood, or hurt, and understandably so, but here's the truth. What people say and do is often a reflection of their own inner world, not yours. Let me say that again. Their behavior is more about them than it is about you. Think about it. A person who constantly complains may be struggling with chronic dissatisfaction in their own life. Someone who's rude or dismissive may be carrying deep insecurities, frustrations, or a need to feel in control. Their anger, sarcasm, or negativity is often the outward projection of internal chaos. That doesn't excuse the behavior, but it does explain it, and understanding that can give you a sense of emotional distance and power. Imagine you're walking through a park and a stranger starts shouting insults at you for no reason. You don't know them and they don't know you. Would you let their words ruin your day? Probably not. You'd likely think, wow, they must be going through something, and move on. Now take that same perspective and apply it to the colleague who makes passive-aggressive comments in meetings, or the family member who criticizes every choice you make. Yes, it stings more because it's personal. But the principle is the same. You are not the cause of their behavior. You're just the nearest target for emotions they haven't learned to manage. When you stop taking things personally, you stop giving others the power to dictate your emotional state. It doesn't mean you become passive or ignore harmful behavior. It means you respond instead of react. You protect your peace instead of constantly surrendering it to someone else's moods. Start by noticing your triggers. When someone irritates you, pause and ask yourself, why is this bothering me so much? Is this really about me, or is this about them? What am I making this mean about myself? Often we react strongly because their behavior echoes a fear or insecurity we already carry. That's where the work is, but by stepping back emotionally and observing instead of absorbing, you gain the power to stay in control. You get to choose how much real estate their words take up in your mind. You can be kind, firm, and clear, and still not take their behavior personally. Ultimately, when you stop taking things personally, you don't just neutralize difficult people, you free yourself, too. Set clear boundaries. Setting boundaries is not just a strategy for handling difficult people. It's a declaration of self-respect. Boundaries are how we communicate what is acceptable and what is not, how much access people have to our time, energy, and emotions. And when you're dealing with difficult individuals, boundaries aren't optional. They're essential. Many people struggle with setting boundaries because they fear being seen as rude, selfish, or confrontational. But here's something to remember. Saying no to someone else often means saying yes to yourself. Without boundaries, difficult people will walk all over your good nature, not necessarily out of malice, but because they can. And the more they sense they can push you, interrupt you, guilt trip you, or unload their emotions onto you without resistance, the more they will continue to do it. Boundaries are not about controlling others. They're about controlling your own space. You can't force a person to change, but you can decide what you will or won't tolerate. For example, if someone constantly interrupts your work with drama, you can say, I can't talk about this right now. I'm in the middle of something. If a family member is consistently critical or demeaning, you can calmly respond, I won't continue this conversation if it becomes disrespectful. If a friend trips you into doing things you don't want to do, you can gently assert, "I care about you, but I also need to take care of myself." It's important to note that setting boundaries does not always lead to immediate understanding. Difficult people may react negatively at first. They may get upset, try to manipulate you, or accuse you of being cold or uncaring. This is normal. In fact, when someone is used to having unlimited access to you, your boundaries will feel like rejection. But hold firm, you're not being mean, you're being clear, and clarity is kindness. Boundaries eliminate confusion and resentment. They teach people how to treat you, and they show that you value your own well-being. There's also an emotional boundary many people overlook, not absorbing someone else's emotions as your own. Just because someone is angry doesn't mean you have to mirror that emotion. Just because someone is anxious or dramatic doesn't mean you have to get swept into the storm. Emotional boundaries mean you can remain present without becoming entangled. Start with small steps. Identify where in your life you feel drained, overwhelmed, or resentful. Those are clues that your boundaries are either missing or unclear. Then get honest with yourself about what you need. Practice expressing those needs with calm confidence. You don't need to over-explain, defend, or apologize. A simple, respectful boundary is enough, and with time, people will either learn to respect your limits, or they'll drift away, making room for healthier relationships. Boundaries aren't walls, they're doors, with locks that you control. 3. Use the power of silence in the chaos of dealing with difficult people. One of the most underestimated and powerful tools you have is silence. It might sound simple, but silence can be incredibly disarming and transformative in tense situations. When someone is being aggressive, confrontational, or manipulative, our instinct is often to react immediately, whether that's defending ourselves, arguing back, or trying to explain our point of view. But reacting too quickly can escalate conflict and give difficult people exactly the reaction they're seeking. Silence gives you something precious, time and space. When you pause instead of jumping in, you give yourself a moment to breathe, collect your thoughts, and approach the situation with clarity instead of emotion. It allows the other person's words or behavior to settle, which can sometimes cause them to reflect on what they've said or lose momentum in their aggression. Think about a heated argument. Often, the person who speaks last or takes a deliberate pause holds the upper hand. Silence can communicate strength, confidence, and control. It's like saying, "I am not rattled. I will not engage on your terms." Without the fuel of your immediate reaction, difficult people can become less powerful. Moreover, silence can also be a powerful form of communication. It conveys that you are listening, that you are processing, and that you are not willing to be drawn into a pointless battle. It invites the other person to fill the space, sometimes with more calm, sometimes with reflection. Another important aspect of silence is that it helps you avoid saying things you might regret. When emotions run high, it's easy to respond with words that escalate the conflict or hurt someone unnecessarily. Silence acts as a buffer that protects relationships and preserves your integrity. Using silence effectively doesn't mean being passive or ignoring problems. It's an active choice to not react impulsively and to create space for better communication. For example, if someone is venting in anger or blaming you unfairly, instead of snapping back, you can simply say nothing for a moment, take a deep breath, and then respond calmly once you've gathered your thoughts. Silence also gives you the chance to observe. When you stop talking, you can listen more carefully to the other person's tone, body language, and underlying emotions. This insight can help you understand their true concerns or motivations, which is critical in de-escalating difficult interactions. It's important to note that using silence is a skill that requires practice. At first, it can feel uncomfortable, especially if you're used to jumping in to fix things immediately or if you fear being misunderstood as indifferent. But with patience and mindfulness, silence becomes a powerful ally. You can practice this by pausing before responding in everyday conversations, especially when you feel triggered or upset. Count to 3 silently before you speak. Notice how this simple habit can change the dynamic of a conversation. In summary, silence is not emptiness. It's a form of presence. It allows you to be grounded in yourself, protects your energy, and shifts the balance in interactions with difficult people. 4. Stay curious, not furious when you encounter difficult people. It's easy to fall into the trap of frustration, anger, or resentment. These emotions, while natural, often cloud your judgment and escalate conflicts. One of the most effective ways to change this dynamic is to shift from a mindset of fury to one of curiosity. Curiosity means approaching difficult interactions with a genuine desire to understand why the other person behaves the way they do, rather than reacting to what they say or do. It's about asking yourself, what's really driving this behavior? What are they trying to communicate beneath the surface? What unmet needs or fears might be fueling their actions? When you replace anger with curiosity, you open the door to empathy. You move from seeing the other person as the problem to seeing them as a complex human being with their own struggles. This doesn't mean you excuse bad behavior or let yourself be mistreated. It means you seek insight that can diffuse tension and create space for more productive conversations. For example, if a colleague consistently criticizes your work harshly, instead of reacting defensively or angrily, you might wonder, are they under pressure from their own boss? Are they feeling insecure about their role? Is this their way of trying to assert control or gain respect? By asking these questions internally, you distance yourself from the immediate sting of criticism and open up to understanding what might be underneath the surface. Curiosity also empowers you to ask respectful, clarifying questions directly, which can shift the conversation from confrontation to collaboration. Phrases like, "Can you help me understand what you mean by that? What outcome are you hoping for here? Is there something you're concerned about that we haven't addressed?" These kinds of questions invite the difficult person to explain their perspective, which can reduce misunderstandings and diffuse defensiveness. This approach doesn't just help in professional settings, it's equally powerful in personal relationships. Imagine a friend who suddenly withdraws or acts cold, instead of labeling them as difficult or mean. Staying curious might lead you to discover they are going through a tough time or feeling overwhelmed. That awareness changes your response from frustration to compassion. Importantly, staying curious requires emotional discipline. When faced with hurtful or frustrating behavior, your first reaction might be to snap back or shut down. Curiosity asks you to pause, breathe, and consciously choose to explore rather than explode. This shift in mindset transforms your experience. It reduces stress and keeps you in control. Curiosity also fuels problem solving. When you understand the underlying reasons for difficult behavior, you're better equipped to find solutions that work for both parties. It helps you move from conflict toward connection. In practice, cultivating curiosity can start with simple self-coaching in the moment. What might be going on beneath the surface here? What's this person's story? How can I learn from this instead of just reacting? Over time, this habit rewires your brain to respond to difficult people with insight rather than irritation. It becomes a powerful tool to reduce drama and foster better communication. 5. Keep your emotions in check. One of the greatest challenges when dealing with difficult people is managing your own emotional responses. Difficult interactions often trigger frustration, anger, anxiety, or even sadness. These emotions can cloud your judgment and lead you to respond in ways that escalate conflict or damage relationships. Keeping your emotions in check doesn't mean suppressing or ignoring how you feel. It means developing the ability to regulate your emotional reactions so you can respond thoughtfully and effectively. When you let emotions control your behavior, you lose the power to steer the conversation or interaction. You may find yourself snapping back, raising your voice, or becoming defensive, all natural responses, but often counterproductive. Difficult people may intentionally or unintentionally provoke these reactions because it gives them a sense of control or victory. The secret to handling them is to stay grounded and calm, no matter how charged the situation becomes. Emotional regulation starts with awareness. The moment you feel your emotions rising, pause and acknowledge what you're experiencing. Are you feeling angry because you feel disrespected, anxious because the situation is unpredictable, hurt because of a personal attack? Naming your emotions helps reduce their intensity and gives you the chance to choose your response. Breathing techniques are powerful tools in this moment. Taking slow, deep breaths activates your body's parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest mode, which counteracts the fight or flight response triggered by stress or conflict. Even a few deep breaths can help lower your heart rate, clear your mind, and create space for calmness. Another effective strategy is to mentally step back and view the situation as an observer rather than a participant. Imagine watching the interaction unfold like a scene in a movie. This mental distancing helps you detach from the emotional heat and analyze what's really going on rather than reacting impulsively. It's also helpful to prepare yourself mentally before entering situations where you anticipate difficult interactions. Set the intention to stay composed and remind yourself that your goal is not to win an argument, but to handle the situation with dignity and clarity. Keeping your emotions in check doesn't mean being robotic or unfeeling. It means choosing how and when to express your emotions. You can express frustration or disappointment calmly and assertively without escalating tension. For example, instead of yelling or using harsh words, you might say, "I feel frustrated when my input is ignored, and I'd appreciate being heard. I'm finding this conversation difficult, but I want to work through it respectfully." Such statements acknowledge your feelings without fueling the conflict. It's important to recognize that emotional control is a skill developed over time. Everyone loses their cool sometimes, and that's okay. What matters is your commitment to learning from those moments and improving your response in the future. When you master emotional regulation, you transform difficult interactions. You become a steady presence that difficult people find harder to unsettle. Your calmness can even influence their behavior, encouraging them to mirror your composed attitude. In the long run, keeping your emotions in check protects your mental health, reduces stress, and preserves your relationships. It allows you to engage with difficult people in ways that are constructive rather than destructive. 6. Choose your battles wisely. One of the most important secrets to handling difficult people is learning when to engage and when to let go. Not every disagreement or conflict deserves your energy, time, or emotional investment. Choosing your battles wisely means being strategic about which issues matter enough to stand up for, and which are better left alone. Difficult people often test our patience by pushing buttons, provoking reactions, or repeatedly bringing up the same complaints or criticisms. Responding to every slight or disagreement might feel like the right thing to do in the moment, but over time, it can drain your emotional resources and lead to unnecessary conflict. The key is to prioritize your responses based on the importance of the issue and the potential outcome. Ask yourself, is this matter truly significant to my well-being, values, or goals? Will engaging in this conflict lead to a positive resolution or just escalate tension? Is this a recurring pattern that needs to be addressed or a one-time irritation? What's the cost of staying silent versus speaking up? By thoughtfully considering these questions, you conserve your energy for battles that truly matter, whether that's defending your boundaries, addressing unfair treatment, or resolving important misunderstandings. Choosing your battles wisely also means recognizing that sometimes the best victory is not engaging. Walking away, letting go, or simply agreeing to disagree can be powerful ways to maintain your peace and dignity. This is not about giving up or avoiding responsibility. It's about being pragmatic and protecting your emotional health. It helps to remember the age-old wisdom: you don't have to attend every argument you're invited to. Difficult people may try to pull you into arguments just for the sake of conflict, not because the issue has real significance. By refusing to take the bait, you deny them the drama they seek. This doesn't mean you become passive or avoid standing up for yourself. Instead, it means you develop discernment, a clear sense of which battles are worth fighting and which ones will only drain you without producing meaningful change. It also means understanding that winning a battle isn't always about proving you're right or changing the other person's mind. Sometimes winning means maintaining your composure, preserving the relationship, or simply protecting your peace. Another important part of choosing your battles is knowing when to compromise. Not every issue is black and white, and being flexible on smaller points can build goodwill and reduce resistance from difficult people. This flexibility can create an environment where both parties feel heard and respected, opening the door to better communication and cooperation over time. Practicing this skill requires reflection and self-awareness. After a difficult interaction, take time to review whether engaging was worthwhile. What did you gain? What did you lose? How did it affect your emotional state? Over time, this reflection sharpens your judgment and helps you respond more effectively in the future. Choosing battles wisely is a form of emotional intelligence. It protects you from unnecessary stress and helps you focus on what truly matters in your relationships and your life. 7. Lead by example. One of the most powerful ways to handle difficult people is to lead by example. This means embodying the behaviors, attitudes, and communication styles you wish to see in others, rather than trying to force or demand change. When you consistently demonstrate calmness, respect, and positivity, you set a standard that can influence even the most challenging individuals. Difficult people often respond to the environment around them. If they're met with defensiveness, sarcasm, or aggression, they tend to escalate. But when they encounter someone who remains composed and respectful, it disrupts their usual pattern. Your example becomes a subtle but strong signal that encourages them to mirror your behavior or reconsider their approach. Leading by example requires intentionality. It means practicing patience when you want to snap back, showing empathy when you feel frustrated, and communicating clearly when you'd rather withdraw. It's about being the calm in the storm and the steady presence that diffuses tension. For instance, in a workplace setting, if a colleague tends to complain or create drama, instead of joining in or reacting negatively, you might choose to respond with solutions or positive suggestions. You might say, "I see this as frustrating. Let's brainstorm how we can improve the situation. I'm focusing on what we can control and finding ways to move forward." This kind of response not only shifts the energy of the conversation, but also models constructive behavior. Over time, others may begin to follow your lead, creating a more positive and productive environment. Leading by example also means taking responsibility for your own actions and emotions. Difficult people can sometimes play the blame game or avoid accountability. By owning your mistakes and demonstrating humility, you encourage a culture of openness and growth rather than defensiveness. Moreover, this principle extends beyond communication to your overall attitude and demeanor. Showing kindness, maintaining integrity, and practicing consistency build trust and respect. Difficult people are less likely to push boundaries or create conflict when they see you as steady and trustworthy. It's important to remember that leading by example is not about perfection. You will have moments of frustration or impatience, and that's human. What matters is your commitment to learning and improving. When you slip, acknowledge it and return to your intention to be a positive influence. This approach requires patience and persistence. Change doesn't happen overnight, especially with difficult people who may be entrenched in their behaviors. But your consistent example plants seeds that can grow into better interactions, healthier relationships, and even personal transformation for both parties. By leading with integrity, calm, and respect, you reclaim your power in difficult situations. You shift from reacting to creating, from being overwhelmed to being an anchor. In essence, leading by example is a quiet but mighty way to handle difficult people. It shows them a better way without confrontation, judgment, or force.